Hello, everyone, or as they would say in Italy, ciao tutti. My name is Mark Tavani. I'm an editor with G.P. Putnam's Sons, which is part of Penguin Random House, and I'm honored today to be talking with the one, the only, the award-winning, the best-selling Lisa Scottoline about her historical epic, Eternal. Lisa, hello.
Mark, you are so nice to do this, and thank you for it. And thanks to everybody for being here. And thanks to Barnes & Noble, who's been so supportive of us from day one. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Barnes & Noble. And as Lisa said, thank you to all of you for being here. We know you're busy, but we hope this event is very much worth your time. And please know that you can leave questions for Lisa in the chat section, and I will ask as many as I can towards the end of the program, okay? Now, congratulations to you, Lisa. Eternal just went on sale Tuesday. The advance and early reviews have been phenomenal. Now, I feel like you and I have been working on this book since about World War II. But how does it feel to you to finally have this book out there in the real world?
I am so jazzed, which is funny because I'm usually jazzed. So I'm like obsessed with this book. I'm so excited, as you know, and we'll tell them all about our process too. We're very transparent. In other words, you can never shut us up. And I love talking about this stuff because it's something I've wanted to do for so long, and have it really be here. I find myself, and you've been so wonderful, Mark. We'll talk about editorial, but even little things like, what does the paper feel like in your hands? You were so collaborative with me. Like, what should the cover look like? I love all this. They had the ideas and I go, that's great. But it's really, I'm just so proud of this book and so excited and happy and grateful. Grateful to my readers who've come along, book to book, 33 books now in nonfiction. They're there. And I'm always thinking of them every time, especially this time.
Well, we're grateful as well. And if you're showing off the package, we will show the consumers how beautiful this thing is, including the end papers and everything else. Just an amazing looking book, right?
Right. And can I tell you something about that?
Yeah.
Well, you know this, but they don't,
Yeah.
Which is that, I really was going crazy with authenticity, and I've been researching this for a while. So I wanted to find a map of Rome in the 1930s, which is when the book was set. So I found this book on eBay, and I said to Mark, I found this map, and it would be so great if we could have it in, because there's a geographical thing about where the characters live. The three main ones live close to each other, and people can understand that. He said, I got this. And that is actually, we even got permission for it. The actual 19th, this is actually the map itself. So thanks to G.P. Putnam's Sons for being so open-minded about that. And really, this is a really artistic effort, but it's so collaborative. And when I said that, I never thought you would say yes, but you did. And I appreciate that. And I think the readers benefit from it. That's what really matters.
Well, one of the great teammates we had along the way was your interior designer, Lori Pagnozzi, also your cover designer, Anthony Raimondo. It's just an incredible team.
Right. We should explain it's interior of the book. Like someone last night said, who is your interior designer? And I was like, no, my house, I do. But you mean the fonts and everything like that.
That's right. That's right. The interior designer of the book itself. Not
right. Of the book.
But you were mentioning about the 1930s. So for those of you in the audience who have not read the book, let's give you a little bit of background here, just so that everything else we talk about can make some sense. Eternal is the story, a story set in Rome, mostly from 1937 to 1943. It centers on three young adults, Betta, Sandro, and Marco, and they've been best friends their whole lives, but now they're teenagers, and they are just surrounded by change, not only in their personal lives as they are kind of finding new feelings for each other, but also as Italy and the world change around them. Mussolini has been in power since long before this novel starts, but when this novel begins, things are changing, and Mussolini is actually aligning Italy with Hitler, and Italians are actually fighting among themselves about what this means. Some are saying it's no big deal, he knows what he's doing. Some are really worried, and you brought all that to life in a way I've never seen before. But Eternal is also, it's a story of love and war. It's a story of family and food, and it's a story that brings to life one of the world's great cities in its darkest moment. So now I had the privilege of working with you as your editor on this book. And it has been a long and wonderful journey. So as you said, we want to open some of this up for people here in the audience. Every novel starts somewhere. So tell us something about where specifically this one came from.
Well, I'll tell you where the idea came from, and then I'll tell you the dirt. which is how this would not have come into life, but for Mark. I had this idea because I was lucky enough a long time ago in the Jurassic when I went to college at Penn as an English major. I was lucky enough to take a course with Philip Roth. And it was a year-long seminar and only 15 kids were in it. And we just broke down all of these books, and we can talk about what he taught me later. But one of the things he did was introduce me to the work of Primo Levi, who was an Italian chemist who was taken during World War II and survived Auschwitz to write the incredible memoir. And as soon as I started to think about Italian Jews and then learned from Roth and then subsequent research, but a really startling true life thing that happened in Rome in 1943, I said, that is a story that needs to be told. So let me take a second to show you another thing I have a show and tell. This is actually a picture I took of Philip Roth in our class. I was the yearbook photographer. And I'm so glad that I did this now. But there he really is. And it's, but it's, to me, it's much more than about just him. It's really about the influence teachers have, because he planted this seed in my mind like 40 years ago. And here I am going, all these years, one of these days I'm going to write this book, one of these days. And then I finally did. Now, Mark said the whole question is, where does the book begin? And I am the last person you should ask, because I began this book, I think in 1922, I mean, not the physical writing of it, but I had this book open in 1922, which was when the day Mussolini rose to power, because really this is a personal story about three families and what it's like to live in Rome during that time and all the drama and stuff that happens and the love and the great stuff that's Italian. But when I handed it in, I've never written a book like this before. I have never written such a long manuscript. It was 1,000 pages. And I shipped it to that man. And he called me late one night and said, I really love this book, but I think it needs to start later. And I was like, what, you mean like page 8? He said, no, more like page 300. And I was like, this is where you find out that, like, I'm just warming up at 2,000 words. So, and I think, vis-a-vis transparency in the process, he was absolutely right, because his suggestions really just totally reshaped this book. And, it's bigger than anything I've written. It's has 3 families over a 20-year period, as opposed to 1 family and a 3-day period. And although I think it still has the pacing of a thriller, because I really wanted it to move fast, and there's so much drama in the time period that you can draw on the true drama and you can draw on the invented drama. And I think it moves along, but I think it really benefited from your edit. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. But what I have to say is, what you did even after you finished the first draft was just remarkable. I mean, the way you shaped this book. But one of the things that I think is interesting is, more than any writer I know, you write from your heart. Okay. So no matter what your jerk editor says to you, how do you but how do you revise your heart? What is that process like? I mean, you and I have our conversation, but then you go back to the computer. And how did you find your way to tell the story so perfectly, even after kind of changes were, so we had talked through changes?
Well, you're so sweet to say that. Maybe this is something that readers would be interested in, because I really feel that I took to heart your words, which I will reveal. I mean, because I had so much heart in this book that all of the characters had all of it. So there was plenty left. And I remember you said to me, look for the light. Remember that?
Yes.
And I was like, because what you really did was refocus. Like, in other words, we started with Elisabetta, who's this really young woman and is trying to find her way and getting her first bra. And believe it or not, that has matters. I gave her my experiences when the mean girls come up and say, you need a new bra. And she falls in love with Marco, who's sort of hunky cyclist and really a sexually magnetic, confident guy, but he has a secret. And she also falls in love with her other best friend, Sandro. And he's thoughtful and a really good listener, which, from a woman who's divorced twice, will tell you, it's nice to have someone frigging listen for a change. Sorry, did I say that? So what you sort of said is rethink it, reconfigure it. And the light, I found the light in those characters. And so it was easy to rejuvenate, reconfigure, and just reshape the book. And I think it is much better for it. And I'm grateful to. And I think readers will appreciate it too, because those minor characters are still there. The parents are still there. All of those other situations. but the focus is different.
You're talking about character.
Mhm.
Every novel is about character at its core, right?
Mhm.
And in this case, it's especially about Betta, Sandro, and Marco and their families. The character is, of course, revealed through the crucible. Like when the character goes through something, they
Right.
have to go through that to become real to us. And you put these characters through the worst moment in Rome's history and endless personal challenges. So how do you, as a writer, balance loving your characters, which you obviously do, with putting them through the worst? How do you do that?
Right. Well, partly I think it's that it's when the novel begins. So I don't put them through it. The world put them through it. I mean, look what we're going through now. I didn't really intend, when Elisabetta, it's really sort of her story to start with. She is really working through she does not have an easy life. She has a difficult home life. Her father is alcoholic. Her mother is, not very attentive to her and maybe even a little jealous of her. And so she finds herself on her own doing a lot of things. And I like that about her because she's always kind of calling on her inner strength. And I find us doing that. I mean, my girlfriends, everyone I know, we are all finding strength we didn't know we had. And so she gets a job and then she learns to cook and then she does all these things at the same time she has a dream. And like a lot of dreams, I didn't throw the roadblock in her path. I said to you, be cool if she wants to be a journalist, because she's a big newspaper reader, as I was. She writes letters to the editor, and I did. I said, why was I doing that? I wanted to have my voice heard. I wanted someone to listen.
Right.
I think a lot of people feel that way. But unfortunately, she chooses to be a journalist at a time when Mussolini is rising and censoring journalists. So then she is going to be a novelist, but she doesn't feel nervous about that. And then I realized, that's a little like me. I've written 33 thrillers. I've written humorous nonfiction. I'm like, Scottoline, like, why do you think you can write this book? It's epic. You jumped right in. What is the matter with you? All those insecurities that people have. And at some point, I won't give anything away, but a character says to Elisabetta, how many people will dream your dream for you? You have to make your dream come true. You have to find a way to overcome your anxieties and write and find your voice. And I feel like that's everybody's journey in life. It happens when you're coming of age. It happens when you're 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, throughout. So in a way, I didn't give her the obstacles. She just was born at a time that threw a lot of curveballs. And we know what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And so one of the things that's remarkable about this book is that it's a historical novel set in a totally different period. And yet, as we worked on it, and now as we publish it, I feel like it is so in tune with our world right now. Like, you wrote this novel during the dark, disorienting, tension-filled last few years here in our country and in Italy as well, right? I mean, this pandemic, the first place where we were kind of reading the headlines before it became, before it kind of was an issue that we had to deal with in our daily lives in America, was Italy. And so a really difficult and strange time both in our country and Italy. And you're writing this novel during that time. But what this novel is about is characters who face things that are every bit as dark, if not more so, than what we've just come through, and they survive. And we see how they survive. We see how, the tagline you've had for this book from the beginning was, "What war destroys, only love can heal." And that really is where you take us with this novel. How did it feel to be writing something that, on one hand, on one level, looked to be of the past, but in another way was absolutely about our present?
It's so interesting because it really was exactly like that experience. And I've never really told you that. So you just figured it out because you're so smart and empathic. But I was writing it and I really started to think, this is so strange. And part of it helps you find the character, because here's the rise of fascism. Now, the rap was Mussolini succeeded because he made the trains run on time. And that is not really what happened at all from my research. And I've done a whole lot of it, and I consulted with historians too. Marco in this book becomes a fascist. Now, so I had to look at why did Mussolini succeed? And I thought, well, part of it is with Marco, in that he, it's not a spoiler. The modern reader, he has trouble reading. you will recognize that as dyslexia. But imagine being dyslexic in 1930s Rome when nobody knows what that is. And so he just feels dumb. He knows he's behind his best friend, Sandro. The class he cannot read. And it is his secret and his shame. But then fascism comes along and says, oh no, don't, you're amazing. You are Roman. And that in itself, this ultra nationalism makes him feel good about himself. Yes, I'm a son of Lazio. We conquered the world. And so that's how he finds his way in. Ultimately, it's a story about identity. And it's also a story about time. You touched on something that I really think is important. I'll just tell a quick anecdote. So I go to do the research in Rome, which was awesome. And I eat my way through everything, which I'm sure I did for my art form. And I remember eating this pizza and like crying because it was so good. But I can tell you the day because I looked out at Rome and I was looking at the vista that I gave to Elisabetta in the first chapter. And you see rooftops that are red tile, and you see Roman columns, and you see things from the 1830s, and you see things from the 1950s. And I said, I remembered the word palimpsest, which is going back real quick. There was in olden times, medieval, monks would write on parchment, which animal hide, right? And then when they would have to write over it, because they had to conserve it, they would wipe it away. And you could still see it. And that's a technical term for a palimpsest. It's the layers of time made visible. And I said, that is what I'm seeing in Rome. But more important than that, somehow it came to me from the pizza, so I can't even explain why this happened. The miracle of saturated fats. I said, the real layers of time made visible. The best example is the generations of a family, right? There you are, daughter, mother, grandmother, and the stories of the family and the stories of the time are all of a piece. So that in a way, as Faulkner said, the past isn't even past. That to a certain extent, we joke around, I'm becoming my mother. And that's when I thought to myself, right outside St. Peter's, I thought, I am my mother. I'm not becoming her, I am her. I'm my daughter. We are all of us in our family. We carry them all at the same time. The time is of a piece. I will tell you secretly, that's why it's named eternal, because it is all happening all the time, all now. And that's why I think it is bigger in scope and really does, if you tell about this specific time, people will extrapolate it themselves. And I leave that to the reader. Is this like that? You decide. Because the great thing about readers is they bring their imagination to the book. And I've learned that I'm amazed by it. Right. And they'll bring it and we'll meet in the middle.
Yep. Now, you were talking about the magic of Italian food. Let's come back to that for a second. You have a character in this novel named Nonna who makes some of the best pasta in Rome. Now, my own Nonna passed away a few years ago. And whenever I picture her in my mind, the caption to the picture is one word long, mangia. She was forever telling us to eat as if it was going out of style. Right. And in this novel, I think it's fundamental to this novel that the food grounds this novel. Food is what gives this story its aroma and its flavor, right? Betta is an aspiring writer, as you talked about, but her day job, she works in a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. And when Sandro and Betta are kind of falling in love, sharing food is part of that. And when Sandro and Marco's family get together, it's over a food full of table, right? Or a table full of food, right? And so where does your kind of food inspiration come from, your personal food inspiration? And what does food mean in this book?
Well, it's exactly my mother, because my mother made homemades and all the detail that I hope I made it into the novel, that, her hands, when you're rolling with flour, it sticks to your hands and all that great softness. And I remember kissing her cheek, and especially as she got older, I said soft as sifted flour. I'm like, that's not bad. And but it was really important to this time period because fascism was so interesting, and leading up to World War II was so fascinating. And I think there are very, very precious few books. I mean, Philip Roth said to us, he thought Primo Levi and the Italian Holocaust was very, very should have been better known. And I agree with him. So when I thought about food, one important aspect was that, as you point out, Italy is a country that loves it. It lives to eat, right? And so the beginning of this novel is just people in love and eating and the wine and all of that stuff that is so Italian. If you're watching the Stanley Tucci series, you will love it, right? You're like, I'm hungry. But what's interesting about that is, as the war comes on, and as you point out, for a while, Mussolini can't decide who he's going to side with, and he ultimately sides tragically with Hitler. Then anti-fascist, anti-Semitic laws are enacted, because fascism had never been anti-Semitic. And then there's rationing of food. And the next thing that happens is the country starts to become very unhappy because there's bombing. And the idea was, the Allies' idea was, we will bomb Italy. They're the weak link. They'll give up. And that's basically what happened. But the south of Italy, where the wheat fields are, was bombed out of existence practically. So nobody could get pasta. Rome was starting to starve. And by the time the Nazis occupied Rome, they weaponized food. They said, we're going to starve. There's a place called the Jewish Ghetto. That's what it's called, where Sandro lives. It's right next to where Marco lives and Betta lives. And it's only 10 minutes from Vatican by walking. And the Nazis tried to starve the Jews. And I thought of it because of that wonderful quote, which I have in the book, and I'll butcher it now, but it's Dante. And he said, there is no greater sorrow in times that are hard, to look back on the times you were happy. And somehow that redoubles and also adds a poignance and a bittersweetness and a heartbreak, like a heartbreak. Yeah. And that is so much about what happens. And I knew that the reader, to understand how hard it is and what people went through and what the deprivation was, the reader would have to remember the days when Elisabetta was making pasta and everybody's tummies were full. Right. So it does serve a purpose. We're trying to make you feel it, try to tell a story that's real. And that way it's no different from anything else I've ever written. You have to just tell the story and make it real.
That's right.
Right?
You did. Now, we have some questions from our audience. So I'm going to bring some of them up. So, okay, here's a question that you and I have talked about, but I think would be interesting for the audience. How long do you spend researching before beginning a book?
Okay. With Eternal, I spent 40 years. I would not say that's cost effective, but I was obsessed. And I also was, there was a little bit of me that didn't feel ready to write this book. I knew it was bigger. I loved, and I feel like I've been practicing for 30 years to write it. So it's unusual. I never would do that normally. Normally, and I'm writing a domestic thriller next, and then I'll return to historical and Rosado, and I'm going to do it all. But normally it's, I would say, I don't research and then write. Right. The same way I don't outline, like you want to know how it ends? I don't know. I don't even know how it middles. I just start. And so normally I'll research as I go a lot of times for the thrillers, but this book, I, read so much. I also read a lot of fiction of the time to get the way that people talk, to get the locutions that were typical. Right. And so this was me getting ready to get ready for a long time. Got it.
Now, here's another question. What was the hardest scene to write in this book?
Oh my God. Yeah. The truth is, every scene is hard to write. Hemingway says, write drunk, edit sober. I'm not like a big drinker. And I believe that Anne Lamott is right. Give yourself permission to write a shitty first draft, right? Yes, get it down. I say to myself, you don't even know this, Mark. Now you're going to be completely disillusioned with I can't believe it. Oh my God. So, but I just say, get it down, then get it good. Writing for me, I love it. And I love to do it. I do 2,000 words a day, no matter what. But I do not think any of it is easy. It is never easy. The only time I get happy is when I'm done the first draft, because I go, oh my God, whoa, I have a story. I like surprises. I like twists. I want that. But I know I have a story. And then I can just go back and really winnow it down before he ever sees it. You wouldn't believe what it looks like before he sees it.
And I'll never know.
No, you won't.
Okay, here's a question that I'm not sure how you'll answer. Okay.
Yo, baby.
Our audience member says, I know that the idea was of a trilogy. Will we see these characters again?
Oh, I don't know. You know what? I didn't know if it was a trilogy. And what kind of happened is in the big 1,000-page version, they were all there. And then Mark's like, Scottoline, what are you doing? But said lovingly. And I said, oh my God, he's absolutely right. Ah! And then I redid it. I don't know if we will see them again. And I think my original trilogy impulse was that I had so much to put in one book. And Mark was right. And I winnowed it down. You know, I had papers scattered all over the floor of my house because the short lesson is in the second draft, before it gets to you, I edit it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I actually do something, and I learned this from Philip Roth. I mean, he said he took apart the novels and would take apart the paragraph and then take apart the sentence, go from macro to granular. And so I end up, weirdly or not, but I'm going to tell you the truth, looking at each sentence in every novel I write and go, justify yourself. And so what I had to do in this book was look at chapter and say, justify yourself. And if I didn't need it, it went. And the whole is better for it, but you got to do it. And I did.
That's like Marie Kondo for novel writing.
Right. But it's more fun.
Does it bring you joy? If not, it's out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, all right. So here's a question. Are there any more legal thrillers in the works or historical novels too?
Yes. I feel very, very lucky. I'm like a count your blessings person. Mark will tell you, I'm always like, this is so great. I mean, I feel very lucky to be doing what I'm doing, to tell these stories, to be able to bring readers with me, because my readers have been amazingly loyal. I mean, they started out with Rosado and Associates, which I know that marketing called legal thrillers. I thought they were just stories about women, honestly. But I get it. And then I wrote standalones because I want to explore that too. And then humor. And now historical fiction. I want to be able to grow. I think readers appreciate the freshness that there is. And I think you learn, like even my little humor columns that are on Facebook every Sunday morning, or you can read in books if you want. But to write 800 words and get to the point is a very good exercise, especially for somebody like me who, is largely caffeinated a lot of the times and says too much. So to get to it, all writing, if you're all writing out there, please do it. I would really encourage you. And it all feeds each other. So I know that my next domestic thriller will be better for having written this Eternal. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And our next audience member, first of all, describes himself as a big fan, just so you know.
I love them already.
Yes. We can't wait to read their copy of Eternal. But they're asking you, which book of yours would you recommend to read for a first timer who's just introduced to your collection of books?
Eternal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so proud of this book. And I think people will feel so transported and so swept away. And, it's like Dr. Zhivago time. If you want to read a story about a big love and a big friendship, and, the themes are similar to ones I've dealt with before, but let's talk about justice in World War II. A quick story is when I was researching it, and when I learned about this really horrific event that occurred in Rome, which we don't want to give away, but you'll read about it. I said to a historian, why was there no Nuremberg about this? Because if you remember, I'm still a lawyer. As much as I want you to like me, I'm going to tell you that. And it bothered me, like it's unjust. Like there should have been I said, why not? And he said to me, nobody wanted another Nuremberg.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, I said, oh, you're going to get one, dude. Like, I can't, the victims are gone. The victimizers are gone.
Yeah. But
I can tell this story and you can know this story. And that is a form of justice. That's what I think.
I think so too. I'll also say that, not only is this novel just a wonderful read and a great place to start with your books, but the other thing is right now, when we're not able to travel like we want, I mean, this is a perfect book to read. It's like, so many of us would love to be going to Italy this year, and we probably won't be. And this is one way to get there, and it's worth reading just for that alone.
Right. And I would just throw in too that the audiobook is so great for that. Like I've never done this before, but I'm actually listening to my own audiobook. And I don't want you to think I'm just like completely an egotist, but I really wanted to hear how it was. And I loved these readers and they're amazing. And that really sweeps you away when you hear these. There's some words that only can be Italian, like sprezzatura is what Marco has. He's effortlessly, casually magnetic. And I love that, like you said, flavor. That flavor is just great.
Yeah. And it's true, before the audiobook was even done, for all of you in the audience, Lisa and I were already geeking out because we happen to be fans of Eduardo Ballerini, who does the male chapters in this book. So if you are looking for, the audiobook of this, we guarantee you've got the best readers in the business. So enjoy.
And the man's a god, honest to God, honest to God.
So, okay, so somebody in the audience who I think must be a writer as well says, I struggle with too much backstory. How do you determine what needs to be in the book?
That's a really good question. And that's a hard one. Here's what I do. This is lame, but I'll tell you the story. So I was going to be on the Today Show one day and somebody came up and they started doing this in my face. 7, you have 7. And I said, do I have 7 minutes? Do I have 7 seconds? They said, no, you have 7 words. Answer the questions in 7 words. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm Italian. That's not possible. But anyway, I think of that with every book. Like I have a 7-word little précis. Eternal, a love triangle set in fascist Italy. I don't even know how many other words, but I know I made it. I actually put that on a Post-it on my computer. And that is my North Star. Because you're always thinking, what is my story? That's the story you're telling. There'll be backstory. If it isn't part of that story, you don't need it. Now, let me help you for a minute. That said, when you're first, you can't decide, you're indecisive, put it in. First draft, you get to put everything in. I did the biggest kitchen sink first draft. And then you see later, did I need it? When you go to justify it, justify yourself. And you do that. Look at me. I'm all like, I am my mother, so that's it. If you use your story as your guide, you will not go wrong. Don't worry about it in first draft, worry about it in the second draft, which is the edit.
Yeah. And I'll just throw in from an editor's perspective to agree with everything Lisa just said.
Thank you.
As you go through the process too, you're going to see which chapters really advance a character's story. They could all say interesting things, but only some of them are really going to deliver forward motion in a story, in a character story. And if they do, then you could justify keeping them. And if they don't, then probably there's a reason why they're inert and you might want to find another way to do it.
Right.
No, go ahead.
I just love giving advice. I'm like shameless. Oh my God. It's an ant on my screen. You're right. There's nothing to add. You said it great.
So here's another writerly question. Did you write this book in a linear fashion or did you write each story and then kind of put them together?
I always write in a linear fashion because and here's the guy, you go, how do you write a book? Here's how you write a book. You start and then you say, you have an opening scene and then you start and go, what would this person or the person who's around them logically do next? What would they do? You don't even have to know anything about them because sometimes what I actually think happens is people talk about plot and voice and characters as if they're 3 different things. And I'm just telling you from Scottoline, they're totally not. They're the same thing. Just like time is conflated, they're conflated. It's like mind and body. They occupy the same place at the same time. So we are what we do, are we not? Well, that's what your characters are too. You might want to play with that a little. They say, I'm a good husband, but they cheat. They're not a good husband. But what they do is who they are. And when you figure out what they do next, it's good to do it in a linear fashion because it should and will impact each other. For example, if you had a fight last night with your husband, I can only have bad memories of marriage. The next morning, you're looking at each other funny around the breakfast table. What happened yesterday impacts today. And the reason for doing all this stuff in sort of that logical way is that I believe that's the secret to sort of a page turner. It's not things blowing up. It's a logical train of thought and action that a reader can follow, may or may not agree with. Mark was nice enough to say, I love my characters, and I do. They're flawed, however, but I have to find the light in them, and I can. I'm not that judgy because I don't want to be judged, God knows. So just go for it. I really want to encourage you if you're writing, really, truly.
So you just gave away the secret to writing a
I want to tell all my secrets and help everybody, Mark.
Well, this is for free. You could have charged for that. Okay, so here's a question that's fun. Okay, absolutely love the cover. Our audience member says, was that the first design created, or were there multiple drafts? Did you have any input on the creation of the cover?
You answer, Mark.
So this cover, Lisa and I have talked about this many times, and this cover is such a great story. So the art designer at GP Putnam Sons is Anthony Raimondo, wonderful guy. And he, when I described this book at our launch meeting, which is when I first kind of like introduced my full team to a book that we're going to publish, Anthony is in charge of the whole art department, and he can't take on too many projects personally, right? His designers do most of the covers that we put out. And Anthony spoke up right away, and he wanted this book. He got it, and he loved the sound of it, and he knew Lisa, and he wanted to do it. And Anthony came back to us, and he did have multiple ideas of where this cover could go. But when we sat there in that art meeting, we all stared at this cover, and we were like, that is it. That's the book. This is Betta. This is Rome at that time. So the only things we changed at all were we actually had to do a little work to make sure we got the right plane. And your literary agent happened to be an expert on the topic,
yes,
guided us towards the perfect plane. Other than that, honestly, this is it. This was Anthony's idea, and it came together perfectly.
And I have to tell you, when they email it to you, and I opened it up, and I cried so much throughout this process. I opened it up, and I am getting all teary, and I'm like, oh my God, what's important to understand about that is to put this in context. This has never happened before in my career. I don't think this is generally the rule. Generally, everybody tries really, really hard. They try to make a great cover. I don't know how they do it because they're geniuses. They send them to me. I get to look at them. I go, not this one. Could you make it yellow? I have really stupid ideas like that. Make it big. So, but I just channeled Joan Rivers, I think. So my point is this. It is remarkable, the story that Mark just told. Never happens. This is a sensational cover. And I think it captures the essence of this novel.
Such a good thing. Such a good thing. Now, here's a great question. What have you learned about yourself through this book's writing process, and how did it feel when you ended writing this book and saw it published, since it took years to write?
Oh my God, that's so sweet. Well, I think I've learned probably what everybody learns a little bit from time to time, which is that you should really just try to do the thing you're worried about. You know, you really, I remember reading Lean In a long time ago, and even, you know, you would think I have all this confidence, but I don't. And so I go, I don't know if I can do this. And I've been reading historical fiction for so long, and I was intimidated. So I think what I learned is you should just do it. I'm always come back to Nike. I've gotten very behavioral, you know, just do it. And I'm going to get better at it. But this really is the culmination of my work to date in my life.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question. Do you have a storyboard or anything with pictures or ideas while you're writing the book?
No, I sometimes, and I wish I did, but I don't. Because sometimes I just have such a vivid idea of what these characters look like. Now, that said, for this book, I did a lot of research. I did so much, there was so much back research for this book that I did something I've never done before. I put all my research videos online. I've been online for 4 months showing them, and they'll all be on the website, as will, by the way, an interactive map of the scenes with my videos and my photographs. Sometimes I looked at those photographs because I don't remember places always, but I remember when the photo brought, oh yes, I love that. I made sure I went in October, and that's when this really important set piece takes place. And I wanted to see what the light was like and the weather and what was in bloom at that time of year. And I planned it, but I went there at the 75th anniversary of this occurrence, this awful occurrence that happened in October 1943. And I was able to talk to survivors and family survivors and really have because although this is like some of the things I've written before, there's an extra responsibility to get it right. An event in world history that impacted the Jewish community and Rome. I mean, it's fairly remarkable, but I learned, as we all know, that Rome is the seat of Roman Catholicism. Right across the river is the ghetto, which is also, was news to me, the oldest continuously existing Jewish community in Western civilization. What? I mean, that's amazing. And the history there is amazing. The history of families there is amazing. So the setting and the times gave me so much drama and color and light, that it was really just a question of, you know, trying to ride a very unruly horse. And I hope we succeeded in Eternal. I really do.
Even if you weren't using storyboards per se, I will say you were sending me pictures along the way of like, this is Sandro's house, right?
Yes.
This
Yes.
is the front door to Elisabetta's house, right? And they were real buildings that you were taking pictures of. And it's not that Sandro or Elisabetta, who were fictional, had lived there, but you were so immersed in their world that you were literally like, I just walked by Betta's house. That has to be it because I know this house, right? And you could actually send me those pictures. So even if you didn't storyboard, it was clear you were definitely thinking in such a tactile way about.
Well, it had to be authentic. I'll show you. I didn't know I was going to show this, but I will, because since Elisabetta wants to be a writer, I was like, what would she write on? So then I started looking at pictures of typewriters, and then I said, I'm going to buy a typewriter. This is actually Elisabetta. This is a 1930s Olivetti, which the Olivetti was an anti-fascist family. And as soon as I got this, I was so happy because I said, well, this is worth the money because I learned the keys are white. And I would have been wrong. And I just refuse to be wrong about facts in novels. And then I started playing with the keys, and I started to feel like her, which is so crazy. And then this is all the detail that I put in the draft that never made it to Mark, because readers don't have time to read about how the keys actually sound when you press them. But I wanted that authenticity. I've had that in all of my novels. I think if you don't know what you're talking about and you don't ground it in real things, truth, whether it's a literal truth or an emotional truth, that's how it rings true. And that's how it resonates. That's why Eternal will make you cry. And that's why it will make you smile. That has to be real.
Yeah. And who could ask for more than that from a book? Come on. It's amazing. If you haven't read it yet, thank you for being with us today. I want to say one last thing before we go, which is really important. The signed edition of Eternal is available at bnn.com. And the Eternal hardcover is available at your local store or 24/7 on bnn.com. So if you haven't bought it yet, please buy your copy of Eternal from BNN. Enjoy it, and let everything that Lisa talked about today. You can be part of it. You can really kind of go there. You can travel to Italy. You can kind of taste the food. You can learn the history. Lisa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody listening, and thanks to BNN for having us. And you'll see how well I signed. I tried to write very nicely for you.
Lisa, thank you. Everybody, thank you for being with us. And as they say in the old country, arrivederla. We'll see you later.
Thank you.